Right now, over $2.3 trillion in foreign reserves from developing nations sits in Swiss vaults. But this isn't about secrecy. It's about survival. Why would countries trust their entire economic lifeline to a landlocked European nation that hasn't fought a war in 200 years? If you've ever wondered why your country's economy feels fragile despite having billions in reserves, this is for you. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Let me take you back to 1998. Meet Kwame Osei, a sharp, ambitious deputy finance minister in Ghana who thought he understood international finance. One Tuesday morning, he got a call that changed everything. Nigeria, Ghana's biggest trading partner, had just had $4 billion of their reserves frozen in London. Not stolen, not lost, frozen. Why? A diplomatic argument between Nigeria's military government and the UK. Kwame watched the entire nation's economic buffer disappear because two politicians had a disagreement. That's when he realized something terrifying. Political relationships shouldn't determine whether your country survives an economic crisis. Here's what blew his mind. Switzerland has never frozen a developing nation's assets in over 200 years. Not during World War I. Not during World War II. Not during the Cold War. Not once. The IMF released data in 2023 showing that 67% of African central banks increased their Swiss holdings by an average of 34% since 2015. That's not a coincidence. That's an exodus. Your country's reserves could vanish overnight if held in the wrong place. But Switzerland's neutrality? That's only reason number 5. The real reason is far more calculated. See, developing countries aren't storing money in Switzerland. They're buying time against currency collapse. Think about Turkey in 2018. The lira crashed 40% in just 6 months. Stores couldn't price bread because the value changed by the hour. Families watched their life savings evaporate. But Turkey's government had one thing: Swiss-held reserves that became their economic oxygen mask. Now compare that to countries using Chinese or Russian institutions. A Peterson Institute study from 2022 found they experienced 23% higher political interference when trying to access their own money. Imagine that. Your money, but you need permission from a foreign government to use it during your crisis. Maria Santos remembers. She was a 29-year-old analyst at the Philippines Central Bank when a 1997 Asian financial crisis hit like a tsunami. The Philippines had reserves in New York, good reserves, legitimate institutions. But when they desperately needed access to stop the peso's freefall, there were verification delays. For days. 4 days of paperwork while the Philippine peso lost 38% of its value. For days while businesses collapsed and families lost everything. Maria still gets angry talking about it. She watched her country burn while signatures moved between office desks 12 time zones away. Fast forward to COVID, March 2020. Global panic. Economies freezing. Countries needed emergency liquidity immediately. Swiss institutions executed reserve transfers in 6 hours. Not days. Hours. Imagine watching your currency burn while paperwork sits on someone's desk 12 time zones away. That's the nightmare that drives these decisions. Speed matters in a crisis. But there's a darker insurance policy these countries are buying. You've seen it happen. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, billions frozen with the stroke of a pen. Developing countries watch those headlines and learned a terrifying lesson. Since Russia's 2022 asset freeze of over $300 billion, developing nations shifted $180 billion to Swiss institutions in just 18 months. That's Bank for International Settlements data from 2024. That's not money management. That's fear. Let me tell you about Ambassador Chukwu. Back in 2014, he was Nigeria's representative when Argentina had $1.3 billion seized in New York courts. Not by the U.S. government, by hedge funds. Private investors used American courts to grab a sovereign nation's reserves. Chukwu flew back to Abuja and went straight to the central bank governor. "This could be us," he said. Within 18 months, Nigeria moved 45% of their reserves to Switzerland. Today, those reserves are untouchable by foreign courts. Swiss legal framework doesn't allow it. The Journal of International Economics published research in 2023 analyzing legal protection frameworks. Switzerland, 91% protection from seizure. London, 54%. New York, 47%. Switzerland isn't just neutral, it's a legal fortress. But wait, here's what they don't advertise. Swiss institutions charge 0.15% to 0.3% in annual custody fees. Doesn't sound like much, right? Do the math. That's $3 to $7 billion per year flowing from developing nations to Swiss banks, just for storage. U.S. Treasury bonds pay 4.5% interest. Swiss deposits? Sometimes negative rates. You literally pay them to hold your money, and they pay you nothing back. Nigeria alone has paid an estimated $400 million in Swiss fees since 2010. That's 40,000 teachers' salaries for a decade. That's the cost of fear. Dr. Amara Singh found this out the hard way. She's a brilliant Sri Lankan economist who proposed in 2019 that her country move reserves to Singapore. Better rates, modern infrastructure, regional proximity. The government rejected her proposal in one meeting. The reason? Switzerland has never been invaded. Singapore was occupied by Japan in World War II. They were talking about events from 80 years ago to make decisions about digital money in 2019. But that's how deep the fear runs. Countries are paying billions for peace of mind versus the risk of catastrophic total loss. Some nations are getting smart, splitting reserves. 60% Switzerland, 40% gold or Asian institutions. The fees are brutal, but the final reason will change how you see global power. Here's the ultimate truth. Developing countries use Swiss reserves as collateral for emergency IMF loans. Sounds smart, right? There's a trap. Lebanon, 2020. They had $15 billion in Swiss-held reserves. When their economy collapsed, they couldn't access that money without IMF approval. But the IMF wanted structural reforms first. Meanwhile, the Lebanese pound lost 90% of its value. Banks locked people out of their own accounts. The reserves sat in Switzerland, useless, while a country descended into chaos. David Kuria was just a 24-year-old finance intern in Kenya's treasury when he discovered something in 2021 that made his blood run cold. While organizing files, he found monitoring reports. Swiss institutions were providing access data to IMF and World Bank officials. They could see Kenya's reserve levels in real time. They could see exactly when Kenya was vulnerable. David did something dangerous. He leaked the memo to local journalists. It sparked a national debate. Kenya now diversifies 30% of reserves to the African Development Bank. The World Bank released a study in 2024. Countries with 100% Swiss reserve concentration had 2.8 times higher IMF intervention rates. That's not coincidence. That's surveillance. It's like keeping your emergency cash in a safe, but your creditors have the security camera feed. They know exactly when you're desperate. This isn't just insurance. It's a control mechanism. So what's the alternative? Here's what the smartest economies are doing right now. Option 1. China's BRICS reserve pool. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa created a $100 billion shared emergency fund. No Swiss middleman. No Western surveillance. The problem? You're trusting rival economies with your crisis buffer. What happens when China and India have a border conflict? Does India still get access? Option 2. Gold repatriation. Turkey, Poland, Hungary physically brought their gold reserves home. Sounds powerful, right? The catch: storage costs money. Security costs money. And try selling 50 tons of gold during a crisis when everyone else is panicking too. Liquidity disappears. Option 3. Digital reserve diversification. Singapore and UAE are positioning themselves as Asia's Switzerland. Modern infrastructure, rule of law, regional proximity. The reality? Still unproven during a major geopolitical crisis. Singapore's been stable for 60 years. Switzerland's been stable for 500. Each option trades one risk for another. There's no perfect answer, just different flavors of vulnerability. So here's where I need your brain. If your country had to choose right now, pay Switzerland $500 million a year for guaranteed safety, or risk everything saving that money. What should they do? Here's the real question. Is Switzerland protecting developing nations or profiting from their fear? Drop your country's name in the comments and whether you think your reserves are safe. And if you think your country is immune to this system, go Google where your central bank keeps reserves. The answer might shock you.